Welcome to today's episode of The Growth Zone. I am Christian Bartsch. What is the core benefit of listening to this show? Business leaders in corporate and privately held companies gain insights into trends and strategies that provide them with a competitive advantage in the marketplace. Each episode focuses on an area such as marketing, sales, innovation, or funding that is absolutely critical to the growth of companies, whether they are startups or corporate global players, where management needs to juggle the challenges of market entry or knowing how to navigate the uncertainties of disruptive developments. Mind-feeding is where clarity evolves and helps solving organizational challenges. For those who listen to the entire episode, I have a special surprise gift. I am working on some great guests that are industry leaders in management, innovation, and marketing. Let's get started on today's episode. So in today's episode, I'll be talking with Aaron Greenberg. He is based in the United Kingdom in the heart of London. He's a highly regarded digital strategy and commercial expertise advisor. So he's an on-demand CMO, startup investor, and advisor. He spends his days helping FTSE 250s and funded startups to navigate the perilous waters of growth and marketing. He has contributed to the growth of client brands including Investec Bank, Peakon, Wonga, Bingo, Nutmeg, Funding Circle, MarketInvoice, and innovation incubation projects with Canon, HomeServe. Oren knows how to handle the big game in marketing as he managed over 10 million pounds of marketing budgets. His impressive achievement included paid search campaigns with over 13 million key phrases. He's also knowledgeable on organic traffic growth and scaling paid search delivery. Oren has been featured in the Telegraph, Social Media Examiner, and the HubSpot blog. Oren Greenberg is an instructor on Skillshare and Jolt. So, today's episode, let's go and listen into. So, I've got today with me Oren Greenberg, who is the founder of a marketing agency and consulting business in London called Curve. Oren, can you please tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So first of all, thanks for having me. Great to be on the podcast. A little about me. So I kind of grew up, I guess, in VC-backed businesses, working with quite a few different, I guess, European unicorns now. And in any given year, I tend to work with about 3 to 5 of the top 100 startups in the UK. I get a lot of my work through the top VCs. That I guess because I've been doing it for so long, actually half my work is working with corporates like Investec Bank, Canon, and notably at the moment I'm doing work with Lenovo. So it's very interesting working with established businesses and corporates, and then working on hungry tech innovators on the other spectrum, and seeing the contrast between them. It's very interesting. At the moment, I'm an advisor and non-exec director on a few businesses. So I provide kind of pure strategy and insight and direction. And then I'm also a hybrid interim or part-time chief growth officer. So I build the teams and manage. So I'm very hands-on. Half my week is incredibly hands-on and half my week is very strategic, top level. So it's a funny mix across the two different types of clients. I'm very diversified with my portfolio. I really like the variety. And I feel like if I just go into pure conceptual and leadership roles, I lose touch with the bread and butter of marketing. And if I do too much tactical, then I feel like I'm not really utilizing all the experience and commercial expertise I've developed over the years in terms of leadership. So I've got quite a broad mix of exciting businesses I support. Mostly specialize in B2B SaaS. I've done work with e-commerce, a lot of fintech businesses, B2C, mobile apps. So that's kind of obviously because of mobile, that's grown a lot in terms of their interest. So tends to be the areas I specialize in the most. Historically, I also did a few different marketplaces on the B2C side. So that's pretty cool as well. So yeah, I've been around for a long time now, almost 18 years doing marketing. I purely specialize in digital marketing. And even though I've touched upon lots of different other areas, that's really where I specialize and spend most of my day.
Yeah, that's really awesome to get such an insight of the expertise and experience. And I was looking at your profile on LinkedIn as well. I noticed you originally started your career as an animator, which is quite an interesting thing because a friend of mine, he lives in the US, and he was started as well as an animator, and eventually started his own studio and recorded and created movies like Garfield and all these exciting movies that we all knew from our childhood, which is a great thing. And you see how, as an animator, you need a lot of creativity and ability actually to reach the audience. And as well, the same thing, I suppose, as well, you'll agree on, is as well with marketing. We have to somehow get people moving to follow our message and actually eventually become clients for our clients or for our businesses.
Definitely. Yeah, it was a funny, the way I ended up in marketing was I remember I did this amazing contract with the BBC, really loved it, and then I couldn't find work for like 2 or 3 months. And I was looking, I remember I was on Indeed.co.uk, a job site, and I looked jobs in animation in the UK, available positions, 9. Then I looked up marketing roles, positions available in the UK, 1,900. And I was like, okay, I think it's pretty clear where the demand is and what I need to do in terms of the skills I need to develop. And that's how I ended up being marketing, funny enough.
Yes, and that's the thing. Most companies need marketing, they need sales. Of course, they need as well other people, whether it's engineers, developers, and so on. And when you look at the hungry tech innovators, as you said, you advise as well. I saw as well that you are as well a mentor on the Virgin Startup program, which is as well quite a fascinating venture there, which is very good in today's world where we need to create more and more businesses to replace old ones.
Yeah, I'm a mentor for lots of different organizations, actually, and I have a lot of people in my network who reach out to me, a lot of contractors, independents, a lot of agency owners, a lot of in-house CMOs, in-house heads of digital, in-house marketing managers, and I'm part of I think now about 21 or 22 different communities. So I'm very active in lots of digital, online, global communities and different specialist areas. So I try and keep as I'm obviously quite time poor, but I love learning and I love building relationships with smart people and building cool stuff. I fundamentally I see myself as I get passionate about the creative process and creating new innovative solutions. I'm always looking to disrupt the way that I do things and to find better ways to perform. And I love building repeatable, functional, scalable processes and systemizing and driving efficiency. So I'm really obsessed with two words, which is efficiency and effectiveness. So how do you get the maximum impact for the minimum resource expenditure? And I'm constantly trying to optimize and deliver that result for my clients.
Yes, and when we are looking at the discussion concept that I drew up for our recording for today, we have a business case that is a fictitious business case, but actually fits to any kind of hungry tech innovator. So the scenario would be a startup that is entering a market where 3 big competitors are already there. They've split up the market between each other, maybe a ratio of maybe 40, 30, 20, and there's still 10% of the market that's actually untapped. So it's the people who may be just moving around these 3 competitors, not really satisfied and so on. And there are plenty of others who may be still stuck with these competitors, these big ones, the established ones, but these competitors are, let's say, not very innovative. They are slow, not exactly focused on customer experience and service and good quality of reach or whatever it be. And when we look at this scenario, we have this startup that wants to actually penetrate this market. These three big dogs in the market, but this company has two key problems, of course, at the beginning, which every business will have if they want to grow up fastly. First, they need to get customers, build their customer base, and secondly, they need, of course, employees. And certain employees are just limited, or certain scarcity of these special experts in the market. And you can't exactly go to every competitor and try to steal the clients or workers. You have to actually create a pull effect that actually gets them excited that they want to have a new career change and go over to this business. And our idea of the discussion for today would be then to look at the opportunities that this business can have in order to, firstly, of course, build that customer base, get those employees that are not that easy to get, and thirdly, become at least number three. Of course, eventually over time, they might become number two or number one, even in the market, or even in their niche, maybe number one. But the idea is currently we want to drive business, get the employees, and that's where we're going to look at, because this business, you might ask, okay, what kind of clients are we looking at? This business will have about 60% B2C, consumers, and about 40% of the clients are businesses. So we're looking to see how can we really create a marketing that has a pull effect and leaves people really happy. But at the same time, those clients that are already in contracts decide, I think it's time to really move to this startup and trust this startup, because of course, with many startups, you don't have a track record like with a company that's existed for 20 years, 50 years, or 100 years. You don't know, is that company going to survive? Is it going to be profitable? Is the service going to be good? So let's have a discussion, an exchange of ideas and thoughts, what this startup could do in order to thrive and get the base and the employees that they really need.
It's a very interesting question around the employees, because what I see is a lot of startups, they take on juniors and generalists because they don't have the resource, and then they tap into specialist time, and it really depends on how strong their advisory board is. But for example, I was talking to someone the other day, and their employee they just hired came through a referral from someone who's like a very well-known influencer in the tech world. And he pinged him an email. He said, do you know someone who's really good at this function? Let's just say that was a business development function, even though it wasn't, but let's assume for this instance it is. And he said, hey, do you know someone who's really good at business development? And he said, well, actually, I've got this guy and he's really good. And what you actually find is in niches or specialists, especially like in SaaS or fintech and other areas I've worked in, there's communities and people speak about who the best providers are. And there's a culture that company produces, and people talk about that culture. The employees speak about it, they talk to their friends, and the people in the digital world are very small. So the best way to really attract that top talent is people want to work with like great people, and they want to solve interesting problems, and they're flexible, surprisingly, the remuneration, if those first two are really strong. And I think creating that strong company culture is really important and critical. But the problem that the business is solving needs to be something that person is passionate about, and then attracting it. Now, as a business gets traction and matures, I think it has a better stab as it gets to the A round, gets to the B round, to bring in these heavy hitters and people who are working in more established businesses, because it's very hard to pull them away. But it is possible, and I see it on almost every startup, that there's an executive who's senior, who was working in a large business, and he just wants to try his hand at an opportunity and taking a bigger risk, and he's taking a big pay cut to join a market disruptor because he believes in their vision, and he's frustrated with the status quo of the large enterprise that's laden with legacy systems, has too much politics, and is too slow to react, and really locked into servicing the existing client base and too limited in servicing them to really invest in innovation.
Absolutely. I agree with that, because when you look at many other businesses and startups that are now already not really startups anymore, just look, for instance, at Tesla, for instance, that it's a business in USA. Yes, it's not in Europe and so on, but they got as well several people from Boeing and other big brands who were working already on rocket science, on vehicles and other kind of stuff, and they were dissatisfied. So that's how as well Alan got as well many really experienced people to move on to SpaceX business even before they had launched any rocket. So it was a good gamble for the people, but eventually they saw an opportunity to really use their knowledge, their ideas, and put them to work, in contrast than staying in their old business and being always rejected and told, no, that's a stupid idea. We have no money, no budget. We don't do that. It's not policy and blah, blah. And you see that as well in many businesses in Europe where they have as well similar situations. These big corporates, some of the corporates are maybe too slow in moving. They are over bureaucratic. And then these people, these high performers, creative people, people who are engineers, programmers, marketing people, all sorts of areas in business, salespeople, they have really good ideas, good talents, but they can't really put them to work in that old business and they have to move on. Yeah, and as I said, community is really a good thing. It's just, of course, some people maybe do not have access to the community because they maybe are not actually active. So we have to still somehow tap into those people, maybe through news or maybe through all sorts of places where we can actually get the information in front of them. Maybe it's even part, some of it, maybe even public relations, getting into magazines and other stuff where these people might be as well be reading.
Yeah, I think it's very hard for people, when you're doing a full-time job and it's very intense, and then you go home in the evening to spend time with your kids or your friends or your family. It's very hard to find the time and energy to invest in building relationships and communities. But I think it's probably one of the most advantageous competitive advantages that I personally have. And I warmly recommend it because it is always someone that you can tap for advice, or because we're just too fragmented with our skills and there's too many different areas of specialization. It's very important to be able to tap into the knowledge of these specialists and bounce ideas and validate that the approach and the strategy is the right way. And, I had a senior exec the other day pick up the phone and he goes, I know that you're an SEO expert and, spend a lot of time in that space, even though now I'm very broad, but he's known me for many years when I was doing deep in search marketing. And that wasn't an area that he focused on. And then he just said, I need to know the most important things about search. Can you give me a brain dump? And then I had a call on Saturday, actually, a 2-hour call, and someone applying for a very senior marketing role, one of the largest businesses in the UK. And he needed like a real deep analysis and thinking about how to present things to the CFO, because he's going to have an interview with him the following day. And I needed to kind of help him position his content and his approach to the CFO. So I think that, building those relationships is so material in how you're going to grow your career and your progress. And I think that probably one of the strongest indicators of someone's net worth is the quality and value of their network. I can't stress that enough. And I think it really comes down to your results as well. Like, you need to deliver tangible, viable results for the business that you're in order for someone to take you into another business. And I think it's hard, because quantifying knowledge is hard and assessing people's skills is difficult. So I think in a knowledge-based world, this is very challenging to do.
Yes, absolutely. Because even if you look at the CVs, depending very much on the style of the CV, you might have a lot of information that is helpful, and some information maybe is just too thin, that you just have to take the time to have a conversation with the person to find out actually if that's the right position, or maybe actually things you notice and you say, hey, wait a minute, this is what the person has been doing, but something different is there that is even much more valuable. But because in his old position, he had no chance to apply that knowledge, here that might be a better position for the person, and the person can thrive. And the same thing I've seen as well with companies, for instance, in Sweden, for instance, what they do as well. Some companies, they shift engineers, for instance, to other outside or spin-offs and so on, and let people then work in that area to regain passion for the whole business and so on, because they just need a fresh idea, fresh kind of work environment, and then they can come back with new ideas, new solutions, and they can improve much more the products or the services that they've been working on before. But instead of getting stuck in a place and then can't moving, they shift them out just to get a fresh fresh mind and get out of that frustration that they can't move on, they can't solve the problem, whatever. Of course, it's not a thing that they just move out for a day or so. They are in that spin-off maybe for half a year, for a year or 2 years or so. But it's a necessary thing just to get them and change maybe as well the mindset out of I'm stuck in a problem, can't get out. And at the same time, with the current situation that we have, many businesses all around Europe, North America, they are all putting people in all sorts of positions back onto the job market. And there is where companies, of course, who are growing are looking for the right people. But of course, they have to see who fits into our culture. As you said, the culture is as well so important because it attracts people.
Yeah, I'd say the culture is the most important aspect. I think also the culture really seeps into the competitive advantage that the startup has to fight with the incumbents. And when we think about the most successful startups and how they're winning, it's because they do less and they're solving a specific problem but doing it better than the incumbent. Like a great example in the UK is the fintech, which has historically been dominated by 5 banks, 5 entities, and they dominate the majority of the market. And now there's a gazillion different challenger and financial banks that are coming about and competing, and they're really focused on great customer service and great UX, because if you think about the operational complexities of the bank, the majority of that is actually invisible to the customer. The customer can't assess the level of risk that a bank has, or how well it handles international payments, or how secure it is. Like, the customer has no visibility. It's not going to go and audit this bank's infrastructure to assess if it's any good. So what is the experience that the customer has? And it's shaped through 2 main things. One, what does a customer read that other people are saying about it? And that shapes their opinion. Almost like when you watch a movie, how do you decide before you go watch a movie? You read what a critic says, and what the critic says shifts your perspective on your perception, because that critic is an authority, right? That's why they're a critic. And that's the first. And the second is that person's own experience of the bank, and the aggregate of what all the critics say and an aggregate of what all the customers have left as reviews is effectively what's going to shape the success of that specific business. And the key is to really excel at one specific function and the biggest opportunity to disrupt that market, rather than what I see a lot of startups trying to do, which is trying to do too much, trying to build too many features, trying to attack too many different customer segments. And that business doesn't have the resource, and it shouldn't try and compete head to head with the Goliath. Really, this David, this small startup, its competitive advantage is it's the size and the agility and delivering a better customer experience. And it just needs to capture enough market share to grow and gain momentum before the incumbents catch up, because they will catch up. It's just a question of when do they catch up. And then you need to build a strong enough differentiation in order to either contend with them or get bought out by them, which is obviously a lot of the entrepreneurs' objectives when they're getting VC money, right? That's the exit within 3 to 5 years, a significant multiple with each raise. So it's an interesting thought experiment as to what are the ingredients that startup success requires. Ironically, there's an extensive research on this, and the only one variable that was came out of the research for startup success was luck. It's good timing, which is pretty frustrating, because it's like, great, the one most important variable is the one variable I can't control. But the answer is, you're much more likely to get lucky if you keep trying, because obviously eventually, luck will play in your favor. And the key is to just kind of have that mindset around persistence and enough time. And if you give it enough time, you're bound to be successful. But a lot of people give up too soon or too quick, and they don't persist long enough. But then you also see the opposite, where people invest way too much time, money, and energy in pursuing a dead idea, and they just don't know when to call it quits. And the truth is, no one really knows, and that's what makes it so difficult. You just don't know if to continue pushing a dead horse, or if you just went 2 more meters, you would have been successful, because no one can foresee the future, right? So it's very difficult, I think, to we criticize a lot of the businesses and how they can do things better, but actually, orchestrating multiple people and coordination when you have lots of different opinions and how things should get done. Or, your UX guy doesn't agree with your marketing guy. Like, I wrote about this. I had a LinkedIn status the other day. I said, as a UX guy says we shouldn't use a lead magnet or form capture. And the marketing guy goes, well, how do we get leads? And the UX guy says, well, if we put it, the lead, it's a dark pattern. It's not user friendly. We should be a user centered business. And then it's like, well, who's right? The marketeer who has a KPI to drive inquiries and drive sales, or the UX person who, as a specialist, is voicing that they don't see this as a recommended strategy that is acceptable in the world of usability and user-centric, customer-centric behavior, which is obviously we're saying is a competitive advantage for businesses. And what we actually have is these really interesting forces that are both external onto the startup and internal with what the right direction is and where the competitive advantage is going to come from.
Yes, and that's the thing, as you say, it's often, of course, the marketing person, the technical person, even the salesperson have maybe a different opinion because, of course, the salesperson is in contact with the client who maybe has misunderstood the message. Or on the other hand, the marketing person is trying to get people actually to sign up to become leads. But if the UX person overcomplicates certain things or thinks that people are doing having that behavior, but actually they behave differently, then they all actually have got, at the end of the day, an empty bucket and not a single lead, which is, of course, a challenge. But in the end, I think it's the people that just have to somehow get together and try to understand each other and figure it out what's maybe the best way. Because I always have the impression that when you look at all these things, in the end, it's the center, the middle piece. So if you, let's say you've got the UX person, you have the marketing guy, the sales guy, then they all have like, each one of them has a circle, and the circles actually cross each other. And the center piece where everyone has a little stake together, where they're all of the same opinion, that's possibly as well that what's actually is going to drive the business in the right way, because it more or less does a bit of customer experience, it offers as well marketing, and it gets the people maybe even to buy. So, but of course it can't be 100% of everything of everybody, otherwise there would be no communal agreement on something.
Yes, I think they have the shared objective in mind for success, right? And then a lot of it is the frictional interaction between them to try and see how to move things forward.
Yes, exactly. And when you think of it, sometimes these people who are maybe more experienced and coming from business, they maybe come from different industries. They're not necessarily coming from the same kind of industry where the startup is now there. Because when you look at all different startups, some of them have been working in the same industry before, and so there's a gap, there's an opportunity, so they decide to work on. But not necessarily everybody else is not necessarily coming from that industry. They're maybe from other industries. It is good as well because they can give input and best practices from other industries, which maybe can help that they actually can even improve and be better than the big other three competitors, because it's always been doing it the same way. And when you look at it, if you look, for instance, what businesses do in the food business or in automotive and so on, everybody has certain things that are really good. Some things are not really so enticing for the clients, but if you try to pick the best things and somehow combine them, you might even get a better outcome. So looking at that, when you think of it, the business that we're trying to push and pull up in our business case, they have, of course, these two different kinds of sections. We have the consumers on the one side who are, of course, very attractive to culture and so on. We see in other businesses, like whether we're listening to all the stuff that's happening with Tesla or Starlink or that kind of stuff. On the other hand, we've got as well a client base that is a business to business. And that might be corporate managers who have to decide, am I going to take the risk and go with this new startup? I might lose a job if my decision is wrong. Or they might say, at last, we've got a solution for a problem we just couldn't even solve, and so on. How would you go about that to get those business clients for that startup?
It's a really interesting one with the B2B. There was a sales director, one of the largest B2B SaaS business in the world the other day, and she was telling me all of our sales come through referral. I was like, don't you spend like hundreds of millions in marketing? And they're like, oh, yeah. But then fundamentally, the way it works at the end is someone still says, should I buy this? And then they say, yes, I think you should. Or, yeah, we've had a great experience with it. And at the end of the day, the way people buy now is very dependent on what other people think. and what is the consensus on people's thoughts on it. And because people work in niches, they ask people in that niche or people in adjacent niches what they think about that tool. And some businesses do a fantastic job with creating this vibe and community around them. Like in the marketing world, if you think about Ahref or HubSpot or Buffer or Intercom, or Drift, they participate and drive not just thought leadership, but the general marketing community. And by becoming a very active vocal participant in that niche, they build a brand, and then brand effectively in B2B helps build the trust to reduce the risk, right? That's why the saying goes, no one got fired for buying IBM, but part of it is because the confidence and clarity that IBM delivers. The problem with a small early stage startup is they don't have the brand to leverage. And then you're like, well, isn't this a chicken and egg? And the answer is no. And the answer is, well, why? Because people aren't buying the brand. You're like, wait a second, I thought you just said brand is really important. You gave the IBM example. It's like, that's not why people bought IBM. They chose IBM over the alternative because of the brand. But what was the actual reason they bought IBM? And it was to solve a specific problem. If you're the best at solving that problem, the experience is superior, then all the people using it develop good reviews, a good reputation, great case studies, and you articulate that well to your target audience, you're going to start to see traction because you're the best at solving that specific problem. The problem nowadays is a lot of the businesses, they're not materially differentiated. They're materially differentiated in terms of the story and the narrative. But when the user actually comes and uses the product, it's just not good enough. It doesn't stack up to the marketing promise. And nowadays we just live in a world where marketing isn't as powerful as it used to be. And marketing, because you couldn't get a whole view of the market, you couldn't just go and check reviews on Capterra or G2. You couldn't just go and do, online like HubSpot and popularized content marketing and inbound. And, you go and you research a brand, and most of the decision about who to pick is done before you've even spoken to them. But 10, 15 years ago, that wasn't the case. You had to go talk to a salesperson. You have to find a custom solution. It was a lot harder. And now it's almost like the way people shop has shifted and changed. And the answer to how you win is you focus on a narrower, more specific problem. You really nail that. And you need to go and talk to your audience and your customer base through any means that you can. That you leverage referral, you leverage cold outbound, you leverage form fills, you leverage account-based marketing, you leverage inbound, be it SEO or lead form fills, or you take them through an awareness consideration decision sequencing funnel on paid social. You show them a blog post, you take them to a webinar, you take them to a case study, and then you need to do this at scale. At the end of the day, it's about conversion rates, and it's about getting the volume to build the pipeline and build the leads up for the sales team. And it's really this orchestration of synchronicity between all the different counterparts in the business. If product built an amazing product and your sales team do a really great job articulating the benefit and personalizing it for the prospect, and marketing do a great job in pulling and attracting the right prospect type, and customer success does a great job in being able to retain them and upsell them and cross-sell them, and your finances are in order and you know how much to invest in the right place, then you're going to have a nice, healthy, functioning business. And I think that's a challenge, is this juggling act that startups have when they have varying quality in different team members, and they have stiff competition, and they're not materially differentiated, and then marketing is expected to carry the brunt of the fact that product's not good enough. And I think nowadays, with the product-led growth in SaaS B2B, and the growth of product qualified leads, so shift from sales qualified leads to product led insight and behavioral insight, lead scoring and intent data, the way marketeers are targeting and getting smarter and unlocking value is really shifting. And therefore, marketing and product are working much more closely together. And specifically in the kind of B2B SaaS, you can see how product marketing is becoming more significant. And you can also see the evolution of new job titles like the CRO, the Chief Revenue Officer, and the Chief Information Officer, right, which is effectively what an IT director used to be. So what you're finding is this kind of cross-functional, full rich approaches to growth. I mean, growth and growth marketing, these are new terms, and they're meant to be fully functional, where they're pulling in data, pulling in product, pulling in copy, design, marketing, all into one core approach and strategy to try and remove the silos that create the separation and the friction from creating the speed and the agility and the competitive advantage that a business needs to experience. So I don't think there's like a simple, I think if there was a golden formula, I think if there was a method, then we would all be using it. And the reality is there isn't a proven method. I think it's very difficult and complex because each business shape is unique because of the people it has and also because of the industry that it operates in and the context of its competitive set.
Absolutely. And when you mention as well IBM, the thing is, Thomas Watson was originally the first president of IBM, and IBM when he joined the business, IBM wasn't actually called IBM; it was NCR, and at that time it was a complex setup of many different companies who did different kinds of products, items, and so on. It was a huge complex mess, and he tried to bring it to a focused business. And he actually came from sales, but understood that the whole business has to be streamlined. And as you say, friction, that is a key thing that many companies, whether they're big or small, comes up because there may be ideas in the people's minds where they don't want to collaborate with other teams, whether they're sales teams or people from other subsidiaries and so on, and getting everybody together. One of the key challenges, for instance, that he had at the beginning, that's around 1912, 1914, just before the First World War, was just getting every business on the same accounting system. So it was just an accounting thing was already a problem for them. And it wasn't about the product itself or about sales. It was actually a thing that nowadays we'd say, that's crazy. That's not a big deal. You can use one kind of system or whatever. When we look at SaaS products, you've got so many products online that you can use. It's even established products like QuickBooks. You can use the same stuff online as well with SAP if you're big business, or use other products from other service providers and so on, whether they're based in USA, Canada, Europe, wherever, it doesn't matter. There are many businesses that are offering that. And as you say, absolutely right, there's really a big issue with companies when they start creating silos and people don't want to really talk to each other. That can really derail a startup, especially. And if they are growing rapidly, it becomes a challenge because you have to as well integrate the people into the team, and the whole big team consisting of all the different departments, they have to get working together because on the one hand, you want to have an inner culture that is so good that it drives more employees. And secondly, of course, keeps customers happy that they're so excited to tell other people about our business. And some of them consider to become clients. Others might say, well, I'd love to work there as well. And they want to start applying for jobs and so on. Or other companies decide, let's partner with this company. And they take them serious so that new opportunities open up. And that's a great thing. So looking at the time, I think we've got a few minutes more to complete our thoughts on that, especially to the business side of how to grow the business, how to get them actually to be more excited about growing and be more effective. Where do you see the opportunity, especially with these tech innovators? Where do they have still enough space to become more effective in what they're doing?
I guess from my experience is because they grow so rapidly, harnessing the chaos is very challenging. And what they're not very good at is building repeatable processes and systemization. They hire at such a rate that new people are coming in an influx. And there's been a few instances recently where I spoke to some businesses and about the same business, and 3 different people said the same thing, but they don't know each other. And they all said that business grew too quickly and it hired too many people. And therefore, it's such a chaotic mess. It's not clear who owns what, who reports into who, and how they work together. And I think the reason for that is the architectural plan for the business was not well crafted. So you ended up having some rooms too small, and the doors or hinges don't open in the right direction, and the living room doesn't really make sense. And in a way, if you think about it, everyone's rushing to build the building, but they don't actually plan it well enough And I think it's kind of easy to say this because you don't really know if you're going to experience rapid growth. Like, you're hoping for it. That's why you raise the money, and that's why you're trying to grow rapidly. You want to capitalize on the opportunity. The truth is, you don't know who you're going to hire. You don't know when you're going to hire them. You don't know if you're going to successfully hire them. And that makes planning very difficult. Nonetheless, I do think that pacing the growth is sensible, and planning more effectively the structures and systems is where a lot of them could benefit from growing more efficiently. I think there's like a core issue here because, I'm more of a believer of building profitable businesses rather than just scaling to overtake and get market share and then try and figure out how to monetize successfully. So I think fundamentally, ironically, even having worked at so many VC-backed businesses, I do think that some of them grow and the numbers make sense, but a lot of them grow and the numbers don't add up. Like, I don't see how they're going to capitalize on all of their cost base that they've hired, and they've miscalibrated the opportunity in the market. They just haven't validated the thinking on it deeply enough and done enough research to get to 100 million a year revenue. It's just not going to happen. And when you talk to them, you kind of go, we'll figure it out in 2 years or 3 years. And in my head, that's kind of it's mad because you're not raising the money to validate product market fit. You're raising the money to accelerate growth of something that works. And what I've seen is a few businesses raise money without having a big enough total addressable market to cater to, and the product market fit is either too small or not pertinent for where the growth in the future is going to come from. So they're raising the money, which is meant to be for infrastructure and meant to be for operations, and spending it on trying to figure out, spending too much of it on marketing, trying to figure out how to grow and get more market share and build a brand. But the truth is, building a brand is a symptom of having an amazing product. You don't tend to build an amazing brand and then figure out what product you're building. I haven't really seen many instances of that being the case. Now, I do think when you're selling something that's relatively commoditized or simple, then a brand is a differentiator. Like Dollar Shave Club, I mean, it's not like there was a shortage of razor blades before Dollar Shave Club came along. So how come it managed to sell for $1 billion? Well, because it innovated in the model. The model was subscription-based, which no one was doing properly. And then they built the brand, even though there's a few competitors in that space, and the brand accelerated the growth. But the truth is, the customers needed and wanted the model, which was like cheap razor blades delivered to my door. That's really what they do as an essence of the business, right? And so I think there needs to be kind of deeper thinking on the planning and systemizing. And there's a lot of mistakes that I see that businesses can make to avoid these critical mistakes with being too heavily reliant on using the VC money to validate product market fit. Yeah, there's so many things I've seen. I could probably speak until I'm blue in the face on all the different areas they can improve. I think it's just, I don't want to be the guy who goes, yeah, that it's easy, you can do it better, because actually it's just really hard. And I think, the people who are in it and doing it need to be commended because it's so stressful and so difficult. And I think it's good to have an appetite for improvement, but I think there also needs to be a bit more softness and acceptance and compassion that it is really difficult and hard, and it's okay if you're making mistakes, and that's part of the journey.
So from your experience, as you say, when businesses are really focused on being profitable and as well having validation of the products that the customers really wanted, that the market really needs it, how long do you see from your experience, how long do the companies in these business areas where there's a lot of technical innovation, how long do they actually need to become, let's say, profitable? That gets a good dark number and not stuck in the red and making losses.
Years, because they go on from seed to A to B to C to D. And once they're in this, once you go VC, you're either going for M&A or you're going for IPO. And the truth is, you're going to keep growing until one of those two events happen, because you can't materialize your equity until that point in time. So, I mean, I've been doing work now for 17 years, and I think a lot of the startups I've supported don't exist anymore, which is gut-wrenching. It's like you put in your heart and soul into building these businesses and helping people become successful, and they don't succeed for lots of different reasons. And some of it is politics, sometimes it's market conditions, some of it is like the product quality, some of it's like poor budget allocation, so many variables as to why business fails. But yeah, I mean, there's really literally a handful of businesses that I've seen that have managed to become successful and profitable and growing. I just think there's a difference between those bootstrapped businesses that are growing organically and in relatively what I'd say a sane route, on people who are capitalizing on opportunity through being VC funded and they're really looking for rapid scaling growth. And for those, very, very few of them have I seen reach profitability, and it just doesn't happen. They just, because of that the route they have to get to 100 million revenue. But just to put it in contrast, less than 2% of the businesses in the US do more than 10 million revenue a year. So like the odds for you to succeed in becoming a 100 million revenue business annually, the odds are low. They're very, very low. For the VCs, it's kind of great because, they invest in 20, 30 businesses and they're betting their money on the unicorn or two, and they're diversified. But for the founder, he's all in, right? He's only got one business. He needs to make it fly. And then, he goes at it. So it's like the founder's appetite for risk they really need to be passionate about that problem, and they really need to be eager and open to taking that level of risk. So the answer to your question is very, very few. I've seen so few of them, I can't give you a statistical answer. But yeah, years and years, I'd say 5 to 10 years minimum.
Yeah, that's what I would say as well. It's a similar number, depending very much as well, of course, where they get the funds as well, and how they are trying to actually get in a market that maybe is partly mature, but nevertheless, there's still plenty of space to innovate. And when you think of it, VCs usually, yes, they are very aggressive and of course trying to make a lot of bets and seeing whether of those 40, maybe 5 survive, and those 5 maybe become $1 billion, and they take the profits that they create from selling, having their IPOs and so on. It'll bring back all the money that they put in other 35 startups. But as well, of course, in the market, several companies who have funding from outside as well, but not venture capital, maybe from private investors, people who have several millions. And currently now, of course, when you think of it, when you have several millions at hand, you can't put it anywhere really proper to work other than putting it in some kind of business where you buy shares or you invest your money in some business that is growing. And some people, of course, maybe they say, well, I'd rather let my money work on this kind of business. It's an opportunity. Maybe it'll become something different, something good, but I don't actually want to influence. I give the money, they do it. And if something good comes out of it, I benefit anyway much higher than if I leave it in my bank account, because I don't get any interest. And if you buy bonds, nowadays bonds aren't any way secure either than anything else. So how many businesses do you see, for instance, in UK, from your perspective, are actually driven by private investors or VCs or those the entrepreneurs themselves with a certain amount of cash try to build a business?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know what the number is in terms of total businesses in the UK as a percentage they're funded, but I do know that the investors and VCs that I work with, they're very selective with the number of businesses that they fund, because obviously expecting to continue to have to fund them for the next few years in case they run out of cash and they need to continue to fund it to get their return on the original amount. And obviously they kind of so even though they keep raising, if you think about it from the VC perspective, they usually run a fund for 5 to 10 years or something at a time. So, and then they need to top it up. So yeah, I don't have a concrete answer to that question. I'm not sure what the volume of funded businesses in the UK is.
Yeah, I can imagine anyway, the businesses that are funded by the business owners themselves, it will be, of course, quite a large number because it depends very much on business. There are these small businesses that maybe are greengrocers, and then there are the businesses who are innovative startups who try to do something, maybe 1 or 2 founders, and they can't get necessarily maybe venture capital money, but they are trying to test the idea and find if it becomes a business and so on. And of course, the less money they have available, it takes longer time. And as you said, 5 to 10 years is a realistic time where business can start. Because even if you look at companies like IBM, they grew I think the group from 1914 to 1954, they increased the revenue by about 100%, which is quite a considerable match, and they got profitable. But it took a good 50 years to really build the business that today we all know. plus the time later on, of course, as the next generations of presidents and engineers and salespeople and marketing people and so on came into the business. So it was great having you.
I actually do have the number. I remember someone actually did tell me, and they said 25,000 annually approximated receive some sort of funding. I think 2/3 of that is angel funding. 1/3, I think, is other sources. Yeah, so I mean that's a number that they quoted, and they kind of specialize in that space. But I don't know. I was asked, I interpreted the question of how many are VC funded, and the answer is I don't know that subset how many specifically are VC funded. But I remember the stat was surprisingly low. I think it's just a few thousand. I think the biggest problem in the UK specifically is pension money isn't used to fund the businesses. Where in the US they get to get leveraged pension money for the funds to invest in the VCs to grow innovation. So in the UK there's a limitation on how much cash is available. So a lot of early stage businesses just can't get funding because no one's willing to take the risk because there's no security, there's no assets. So that's where really angels are. They expect a great return, but they're really you have to be relatively high net worth to diversify enough risk to see enough return to justify the model. So I think it's kind of, if you're rich enough, it's great. If you're not rich enough, then you need to just really be passionate about helping people solve complex, interesting problems.
Usually these startups have to have some kind of business model that they can at least show that it to a certain degree works, so that the investors then think, okay, that's obviously the idea could work. But of course, some ideas might work in small, and if you want to scale them, you notice, okay, that's not scalable. If you need to scale it, let's say nationwide or across several nations, and if you can't scale it, then you won't reach profitability in the scale that you need it. Then, of course, that business model might not be interesting as well for the entrepreneurs or those investors, private investors who are willing to take that certain risk because of their own mindset and willingness. Oren, it was great having you here on the show. And I'm sure we'll be talking in the future as well about other topics around business, marketing, and growth marketing. That. Thank you very much for being here.
Real pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Growth Zone with Christian Bartsch. Thank you for listening. Please leave a review or rating here on iTunes or on podchaser.com. If you found the content helpful, then share it on social media. I would like to invite you to follow our show so that you don't miss the upcoming interviews with leaders in the market. Simply visit the website follow.premiareach.com. I will be adding the link also to the description of this episode so that you just need to click on that link. For those of you who are listening and signing up to follow the show, I have reserved a free copy of the ultimate guide on content marketing. This is the strategy that got me top corporate clients like McDonald's, Linde, Hewlett-Packard, Deutsche Bank, Volvo, and many others. That strategy has been working for over 10 years. It also got me contacts with police, transport authorities, military, and several universities, and even leading research institutes. For sure, it also worked wonders as it got me many small, medium-sized entrepreneurs and enterprises as clients. And that even included international clients from all around the world. The link to sign up for our free broadcasting service and the guide is follow.premiareach.com. That will give you access to the most recent version of my ultimate guide on content marketing. You can follow me as well on Twitter by using the Twitter handle CAP_Bartsch. That's spelled Charlie, Alpha, Papa, Bravo, Alpha, Romeo, Tango, Sierra, Charlie, Hotel. Yes, that is CAP Bartsch. Charlie Alpha Papa Bravo Alpha Romeo Tango Sierra Charlie Hotel.